Okay, good evening to all and welcome to the last session of ecology and environment. We completed almost all good topics there. Two small topics are left out. One is solid waste management and then environment impact assessment. Environment impact assessment. Two topics are left out. And here when we talk about solid waste management, it is mostly when we say it consists of more amount of facts and small concepts are there. Now here, don't make over interpretation of that. Just understand them and keep them into your data. So over interpretation is not required in this. Now the moment when you take a topic like solid waste management, then you should always remember that such contains or solid waste, whenever we read or study, we will always have scarcity of data and resources. So this will always have scarcity of data and resources. So this you should keep in the mind. So they will always have the scarcity of data and resources. So when we don't have exact data, when we don't have sufficient resources, then it hampers the ability to manage that. It hampers the ability to effectively manage. It hampers the ability to effectively manage that. Effectively manage. See, before prelims, it's better to do your notes, write them one or two times, and a proper revisions, 2 or 3 times proper revisions is more than sufficient. But you should develop a flow chart 2 or 3 times, and in that one time should be writing, and then you make a flow chart and keep that flow chart as a reference one. So it is at least 3 times, very strong revision is required. Okay. Solid waste management, you should remember that there is scarcity of data and resources. That is one. Now here when we talk about solid waste, how do we define a solid waste? In a very simple term, it is unwanted or useless solid material which is generated by human activities in the residential, industrial, or commercial areas. So in the context of India, it can be both in the rural as well as urban areas. Right? So solid waste which is generated by any type of activities, industrial or commercial areas, in the urban areas, and in the rural areas, more specifically we say agriculture and other activities. Now a data which says that every year world produces 2 billion tons. So these data, as I told, there will be a scarcity, so there will be variations. Now you should not be mentioning them very perfectness. So hence we say every year the world produces around 2 billion tons of municipal waste, which may rise to 3.4 billion tons by 2050 due to rapid urbanization, population growth, and economic development. Apart from that, you can also say that it is mainly due to rising of middle class, and also we say the consumption patterns have been changed. The consumption patterns which have changed, which have been changed. Right? So this is something where you need skills to write your answers. Middle class, more money with them, so more purchasing power, and consumption patterns have been changed. Now here we find online deliveries are there, right? So patterns are also not same, varieties are there, consumption are also changed. So hence we find large activities are there which always end up in creating large amount of waste. Now, categories of solid waste, we can define them on the basis of origin. They can be domestic, like they can be referred as biodegradable waste, domestic or biodegradable type of waste, industrial waste, commercial, or they can be construction or institutional. So on the basis of origin, from where they are created, where they are created, then on the basis of content, what it has, content, what it consists of, what it consists of. And here you can classify them into organic material. We refer that as biodegradable. Then non-biodegradable, like glass, metal, plastic, etc. Non-biodegradable. Non-biodegradable, like the glass, metals, plastic, etc. Then third one is based on their impact, whether they are poisonous, dangerous, toxic, health hazards. So they are classified as toxic, non-toxic, flammable, or radioactive, infectious. So this is based on their threat, based on their potential threat. So this is the categories of solid wastes. Now, types of solid wastes. Types of solid waste. So they can be municipal solid waste. Municipal solid waste includes commercial and residential urban areas. In the urban areas, right? And they are generated in the municipal or notified areas, either solid or semi-solid form. So this urban and other, this you are done in your geography, right? So urban areas, they are given the census definition for that, tier 1, tier 2, and all. So we refer them as urban. More than 75% of the population is non-agriculture, density of 500, and also certain statutory and non-statutory. So we refer them as urban areas. Then hazardous waste, or industrial solid waste, they are more dangerous. So we refer them as, they consist of toxic substances, poisonous one, corrosive, highly inflammable. Inflammable means chances of blasts, explosion, or react when they are exposed to certain things. So they are dangerous one. Chances of explosion is C. And then medical waste, like the COVID syringes which were used, or the bottles which were used. So we refer them as biomedical waste or the hospital waste. Biomedical waste or the hospital waste, highly infectious and can be serious threat to the human if we don't manage them scientifically or discriminate way. So generally we have seen this during the COVID, the syringes after the vaccination, the blood tests, all those. So they are major threat where they move from, where they are transferred from one people to another, right? Contagious disease which spread very fast if we don't manage them scientifically or discriminately. So municipal waste, hazardous waste, and biomedical waste, three types of wastes, right? Then in the context of India, these facts are very important. Facts are very important. Total municipal solid waste generated is between 55 to 65 million tons. And the plastic waste contributes to 5 to 6%. This is, I'm talking about India. Then next is 70% is collected. 70% of solid waste is collected, and only 12 million tons are treated. Treatment is done to that, and 31 million tons are ending up in the landfills. It means they are thrown without segregation. Without segregation. Then, if we take the current data, current estimates suggest that the per capita waste generation per capita waste generation in India ranges from zero point 0.2 to 0.6 kg per day per person. and it is expected to double within 30 years because of our lifestyles, because of the usages, because of the varieties which are available in the markets. Rapid increase in the urbanization and per capita income, that is rising middle class, has significantly led to increase in the municipal solid waste generation. So this can be not only in the food, also in the lifestyles, construction of new homes, debris which are thrown, old buildings when they are demolished, their debris have to be thrown. So it is about the middle class, rise of middle class, where they are having large amount of incomes, and this incomes are used for construction activities, food activities, and all. Then India's solid waste collection efficiency is around 70% of the world. India's solid waste collection is 70%. Compared to other parts of the world, it is 90, 80. But India has 70%, while almost 100% in many developed countries. So it means we are lagging a gap of 30%. We are lagging a gap of 30%. Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs has advised all the states and union territories to collect. This has been given in the year 2023. Why? Because there were large amount of the debris which are due to demolition, building demolition. And it is very difficult to trace that data. And these building demolitions, when they do, all the debris they will dump either in the river, they will dump in a lake, or they will dump in any lowland areas. They are not safe disposal, so they generally dump in the water bodies, which can create problem to the wetlands, create problem to many other. So dumping is seen here, right? So here they wanted to have the data, they wanted to have the complete data about the collection and demolition of the building waste, which is very significant in the context of India. And this is done by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and this was introduced in the year 2023. In the year 2023, they wanted to have a complete data about demolition. Then if you see the composition of municipal solid waste in context of India, we find that biodegradable waste is around 40%. Then recyclable waste is only 8%. So this is a very alarming point. Only 8% of the wastes are recycled. Only 8% of the wastes are recycled in the context of India. Very alarming. Very alarming. So it means still we are using single use plastic, still we are using unscientific methods in storage and other parts. So only 8% is recycled. Very alarming data in the context of India. So the composition of municipal solid waste is 40% is biodegradable, and remaining is one. And within that, dangerous inert means which can have some impact. 15% is there, but recyclable is only 8%. It can be metallic, or it can be rubber, or it can be plastic, but only 8% is recycled, right? Then if you talk about biomedical waste, you may come across certain terms: yellow category, then red categories. So generally yellow categories are used for anatomical means like the organs and tissues which have been operated, throwing them, the organs, tissues, bloods, or sometimes when they make some surgeries and that. So anatomical body parts, anatomical body parts which are thrown there. And here they have to be disposed very carefully. They have to be disposed very carefully. And this is done by burning them or making them into incineration, high temperature, treating them in high temperature. Incineration. Incineration means high temperature. Treatment is done with high temperature or plasma pyrolysis, where we find all such types of contaminations are removed. After that they are buried in the rural or remote areas. We refer them as yellow categories. Yellow categories. Organs, operations, any such tissues, they are incinerated and then buried. Safe disposal. Then red category. Red category, which consists of the bottles, syringes, etc. Now here it is done by a process called as autoclaving. Autoclaving. Now what is autoclaving? So autoclaving is a process. Autoclaving is a process where we treat them with high pressure boiling water. High pressure boiling water, you treat them contaminated, and then you can recycle them. High pressure, you treat them with high pressure water, that is boiling water, and after that you can recycle them, and they should not reach to the landfills means they can't be thrown outside. You can use them for recycling. Use them for recycling. Saturated steam, it means that the moment when you say 8,000, 800,050, you don't find any water. It should be a steam only. It should be steam only. So here we use that high temperature waters. This is steam, high temperature waters. Then white categories. White categories, they are the needles, disposable syringes, which are right. Now here, when we talk about these needles and all, so they also need autoclaving. Autoclaving, that means high pressure boiled water. The contaminations are minimized then, and after that they are disposed to the iron foundries or designated pits. White categories. Then blue categories, broken, discarded hand gloves, etc., discarded glassware, etc. Now here they are soaked and cleaned with sodium hypochlorite. They are soaked and cleaned with sodium hypochlorite, and after that they can be used for recycling. They can be recycled. So blue category can be recycled. Red category can be recycled. Red category can be recycled, but with a proper process. Blue category, yes, with proper process. Is it clear? Then something called as integrated solid waste management. Now this is a holistic approach of the solid waste management. It talks about reducing the production of waste, reducing the production waste. See, biomedical waste you will get in your SNT. I'm just explaining that, so you don't need to go in detail about that. So biomedical rules or waste, so they are having certain aspects which consist of science-based data, right? So I'm just giving you the solid management perspectives. It also talks about collection of the solid waste, then disposing them properly, plus recycling wherever it is possible. So all these aspects we refer them as integrated solid waste management. Right. Now next, when we talk about the solid waste management, so this solid waste, when it is collected, it is segregated at the source. Segregated at the source. It means it is demarcated, and it is into two ways. Segregated into two ways. That is biodegradable waste and non-biodegradable wastes. And in this non-biodegradable wastes, Non-biodegradable waste, they consist of two categories. Am I visible? Okay. So non-biodegradable, they consist of hazardous, which can be potential threat, and non-hazardous. Hazardous and non-hazardous. Now, when they are hazardous, so these are to be sterilized. Hazardous, they have to be sterilized. Sterilized and disposed. Dispose means dumping them, cleaning off, sterilized and disposed as per scientific guidelines. As per scientific guidelines. Guidelines. Non-hazardous solid waste. Non-hazardous solid waste. It can be plastics, it can be glass, metals, etc. These are the one which are recycled. These are the one which are recycled. And biodegradable waste, they are sent for composting. That is creating organic manure. Organic manure. So this is called as integrated solid waste management. Segregation is done at the source. You separate them as biodegradable and non-biodegradable, and then from this you can take up non-hazardous plastic waste and hazardous one, and then you can recycle and you can dispose them properly. Dispose them properly, right? Now, treatment and disposal of solid waste. Now, here we have to be very careful. There are certain solid wastes which cannot be segregated, at the source. Segregated at the source. So when you are unable to segregate them, so unsegregated waste, you collect them and you dump outside the city. We refer that as open dumps. Untreated, uncovered, not segregated waste, it is dumped outside the city. We refer that as open dumps, and these are the one which are most dangerous one. They are having the potential of creating many disease, and they are the one which are responsible for large amount of pollution, air pollution, groundwater pollution, because the liquid, when it percolates downward, it can be air pollution or it can be water pollution. We refer that as open dumps. Now, after this open dump, we have something called as a systematic approach has been done. We refer them as the landfills and sanitary landfills. Now here, a layer of concrete bricks is constructed so that the connectivity between the solid waste and the earth is stopped. So we find that a contact between the waste and the environment is significantly reduced when we construct a layer of, right? So here we find the waste which is deposited is covered, and its direct contact with the environment is reduced, and it is having the Lichet collection pumps. So whatever liquid which percolate downward, it reaches to this surface, and this is collected outside. It will not reach to the aquifer. Not reach to groundwater. So in this case, it will not make groundwater pollution. No groundwater pollution. No pollution. Because that pollutants are accumulated through these Lichet pumps. They are accumulated through this Lichet pump. We refer that as landfills and sanitary landfills. So here you don't explain in detail, just remember it's a controlled disposal of a waste in such a way that the contact between the waste and the environment is significantly reduced and the waste is concentrated in a well defined area. in the well-defined area. So we refer that as sanitary landfills. Is it clear? Now, next is incineration plants. Now, these are most controversial types. So generally, the government initiated this to create something called as waste to energy projects. Waste to energy project. And they are most controversial. And then you have seen that in many areas like Delhi, where the Okla plant in Delhi, where large amount of the unrecycled waste are burnt here with high temperature, and that create large amount of energy production which can be used for energy usages. But but the major problem is the toxic substances which are released by this. Now, what is this incineration plants talks about? It is when the wastes are segregated. The wastes are segregated, and these wastes, when they're segregated, we can have recyclable and non-recyclable. So recyclable products are taken outside, but those which are cannot be recycled, they are used in waste to energy concept. The recyclable products, they are taken outside. After segregating the recyclable products, they are taken out for next process. But those which cannot be recycled, so they are burnt at very high temperature. They are burnt at very high temperature, and during that they release a large amount of gases, and these gases can create a disease which can be a disease which can cause something called as cancerous or carcinogenesis, carcinogenic, which can lead to cancer like event, and which can affect the nervous system. So hence, even though they started this as waste to energy, where burning of these in the plants, this burning creates large amount of energy, and this energy can be used for many activities. But the pollution associated with that made it very, very controversial in the context of waste to energy part, waste to energy concept. Incineration. So it is burning of non-recycled products. Then pyrolysis and gasification. So remember, pyrolysis and gasification. So combustion in the absence of oxygen or under controlled oxygen, we refer that as pyrolysis. Pyrolysis. So here the differences are: pyrolysis is the process of organic matter in the absence of oxygen, and gasification is where it is burnt in the presence of oxygen. In the presence of oxygen and absence of oxygen. So we refer them as two types. Now you don't have to write in detail about that. So it is just about pyrolysis, combustion in the absence of oxygen, and gasification in the presence or little of oxygen. We refer that as pyrolysis and gasification, right? Then biological treatment. So this is where we say the biodegradable wastes. Biodegradable wastes. After segregating, after segregating. Right. So they are treated with either earthworms or combined with other manure. They are treated either with the earthworms or they are combined with other manures, or they are combined with other manures. We refer that as biological treatment or biodegradable waste treatment. If it is treated with the earthworm, if it is treated with the earthworm, we refer this as vermicomposting. And if it is combined with other manure, it is simply referred as composting. It is referred as composting. So composting and vermicomposting. after segregation, right? Then in the context of any solid waste, when you talk about integrated solid waste management, this integrated solid waste management always talks about the three R's, right? That is reduce, recycle, and reuse them. Reduce, recycle, and reuse them. Three R's. Three R's there. So recovery is when you make recycling. After that, you recover them for other activities. So these are referred as three R's of integrated solid waste management. Three R's: reduce, recycle, reuse them. Reuse them. Then recently we find that, which is developed by the Central Mechanical Engineering Institute and Council of the Central Industrial Research, CSIR. So where they segregated the wastes, decentralized dissemination of the solid waste, that is segregating them, mechanical segregation process. And here it led to a new concept called as waste to wealth. Waste to wealth. It means that when we make the solid waste treatment, it will generate a commodity, it will generate something, and this can be used for either construction work, you can use it for, say, some fertilizers, you can use it something which can have economical value, and we refer that as waste to wealth concept. We refer that as waste to wealth. Initially it was waste to energy, which was controversial. Now we say it is waste to wealth concept. Now here they use this by using something called as plasma arc. So plasma arc means it is burning the solid waste at high temperature. And then they found that the residues which were generated were good carbon content, were used in agriculture, as a fertilizers. And the non-usable were utilized in constructing work. So it means that either they can be used in agriculture sector or they can be used in the construction sector. So it means their usability, they were used after treatment. Right. So such concept we introduced, we refer that as waste to wealth concept. So something about that, simple statements. The Waste to Wealth mission set up by Prime Minister, Science and Technology and Innovation Council. It oversteps waste and pollution management, transforming these into productive avenues of energy and growth, transforming the waste into energy and other products. Now, this is not done unscientific way. It is done by using all the global parameters. It is done in all the global parameters, global technologies, capacities to create socio-economic benefits, right? And all such which can create a pollution and all. So they all are converted by using innovation and technology. Innovation and technology of global standards. Right. So it identifies, tests, validates, and deploy technologies to treat the waste, to generate energy, recycle material, and extract resources, which can be used in many type of activities. They can be for construction roads, construction buildings, or construction of any infrastructures. And this mission will assist the Swachh Bharat and smart city projects. So that's why we come across many roads were constructed by using the solid waste which has been generated from waste to wealth projects. So many roadways, many national highways where they say we are using the waste which has been generated and that has been converted into a product, and that product is used in the construction of the roadways there. Right. So we refer that as the waste to wealth concept. Waste to wealth concept. So it is where we find after segregating, those which cannot be recycled, those which cannot be recycled. So from these we create the waste to energy. Sorry, waste to wealth. And those which can be recycled, we use them often and often. Right. Then solid waste management rules of 2016. Very simple one. It is segregating at the source before handling to the collectors. Before handling, you segregate that. Manufacturer or brand owners. Manufacturer or brand owners of the sanitary napkins. This is with reference to plastic waste, are responsible for creating awareness for proper disposal of sanitary waste. Awareness for proper disposal. So, brand owners, manufacturers. This is with reference to plastic waste. This is 2016. Then, collect back scheme packaging of non biodegradable. Collect back scheme for packaging waste for non biodegradable by brand owners was done. So, this was also in the year 2016, which cannot be recycled. Which cannot be used for composting, which cannot be done by composting. So you have to collect back. So the idea is when you collect that, two things are possible. Either you recycle them or dispose carefully, recycle or dispose them carefully. Right. Local bodies to decide the collection and processing of the solid waste. Local bodies means the panchayatis, the urban local bodies. So they will be deciding them what fees should be imposed. Right. And promotion of waste to energy of non-recyclable. Now this is what we refer them as controversial. Waste to energy is controversial. And hence we have introduced a new concept called as waste to wealth. A new concept has been introduced called as waste to wealth. Now when you are writing anything, you should remember we are working on this waste to wealth rather than waste to energy. It is more controversial because of its potential capacity of creating large amount of pollution. So we are working on waste to wealth projects. Right. Then the constitution of Central Monitoring Committee under the chairmanship of Secretary of MEFC, who can monitor that carefully. These are all factual data. Solid waste management rules of 2016. Right. Then we talk about something called as plastic wastes. These facts are very important. More than 400 million tons of plastic which is produced every year, half of which is designed to be only one time, single use. Half of that is single use. Of that, less than 10% is recycled. Facts. An estimated 19 to 23 million tons ends up in the lakes, rivers, and seas. So it is entering into aquatic water bodies, which becomes threat to the organisms there. Organisms, when they consume the plastics, it becomes threat for them. Then microplastics less than 5 mm, which are formed during plastic and plastic products, and also when we make wear and tear and aging, so they also enter. Now these are responsible for large amount of impact on marine organisms like fish. Example, when they eat these plastics, when they eat these microplastics. They can't digest them. Their stomach will be filled with the plastics, and they can't take extra food. They can't digest, they can't throw it out, and they can't take extra food. So in that case, they will die of hunger. So these fish and all, after consuming the fish, they die of hunger. It is not only about the fish, many marine organisms, because they do not have the capacity of digesting the plastics, and hence they end up in large amount of death due to starvation. Due to starvation. Right. Plastics are added to the environment during washing synthetic clothes, fragments, and all. So this is how they add it. This is how they enter. This is how they enter into the atmosphere. Then breaking waves of seas may be transporting the microplastic. Breaking waves means when the oceans are there. So the coastal areas, when they reach to the coastal. Now here the wave breaking takes place. Wave breaking takes place. That waves formation breaks, which creates the froth like condition. And this wave, when it breaks, it carry the pollution. It will carry the plastic pollution to deep water. To deep water. Breaking of that. Right. Now, towards ending plastic pollution, United Nations Environment Program established an intergovernmental negotiating committee to draft international legal binding institution by 2024. We have to see this. Maybe by another 2 months or 3 months, it will give up all its drafts. It will give all the objectives. All the objectives which can be done in the international parameters. Now, Basel Mission has Basel Convention has banned the single-use plastic in the international one. So, if you are good enough in current affairs, the Basel Convention has banned the single-use plastic. Single-use plastic from 2021. It is banned according to Basel Convention. Basel Convention. Single-use plastic has been banned. That is, hazardous single-use plastic is banned here. Right. Then, if you take the plastic and the data, so 36% of all the plastic is used in packaging. Packaging. And if you take 100 billion tons of waste from building and construction, they directly are sent to the landfills. Then more than 45 million tons of plastic enters to the ocean from industrial region, which becomes a major threat to the marine organism. Threat to the marine organisms. Then cars are made up of around 30% of plastic components. Plastic components, right? Then packaging materials. Packaging materials. Single-use plastic is made up of some fossil fuels. Single-use, where they are not recycled. They are made up of fossil fuels, which makes around 3.4%. 3.4%. So this is how we talk about the plastic and its usage. Plastic, its usage, and how it enters to the ecosystem. How it enters to the ecosystem. Is it clear? So they may not be asking in detail, but this should be kept in the mind that how this plastic enters into the ecosystem. Now this is very important because recently the 2023, that is last year, when we completed the International Environment Day, World Environment Day. So the theme of World Environment Day is about plastic pollution. The theme of World Environment Day was controlling the plastic pollution. Right. Then, environment issues associated with the plastic waste disposal. Indiscriminate littering. Littering means throwing, unskilled recycling without proper engineering methods, and non-biodegradable polished waste. They will create many environmental issues like pollution, and when it enters into agricultural fields, it will impact their capacities. It will impact their fertility. fertility. During polymerization process, fugitive emissions are released, which are poisonous. Poisonous. During manufacturing, various types of gases are released, which can be greenhouse gases and which can be harmful one. Indiscriminate dumping of the plastic waste on the land makes the land infertile, and sometimes when they are consumed by animals like cow and buffaloes, when they are consumed by animals like cow and buffaloes, they create hazard to them, digestive problem and disease to them when they are consumed by them. Burning of the plastic generates toxic poisonous emission, right? Then non-recyclable plastic wastes such as multi-layer thermoplasts, their disposal is major problem because we don't have proper sterilization. We don't have proper sterilization. We don't use the proper methodology. So hence their disposal is a major problem. Disposal, because it has to be disposed with scientific methods. Scientific criteria are required to that. Then recycling industries operating in non-conforming areas are posing threat to environment because they are done in haphazard way, where they are not using any standard norms. Standard norms are deviated, and they always have an impact on animals and marine species. Impact on marine and animal species when they are eaten up by animals there. So you don't have to elaborate this, just write if they ask in the mains, not for the prelims. Right. Then banned items in India. India has banned the manufacture import of these many from July 1, 2012. And the banned item in India are earbuds, plastic sticks, plastic flags, candy sticks, ice cream sticks. So these are the ones which are banned in India. June, July 1, 2022. And not even sale, even the usage of that. And remember, all these are single use. All these are single use. Facts. Don't make interpretation of this. Right. So these are the one which have been banned in India. Then there is something called as plastic waste management amendment rules, which were introduced in the year 2021. Now here they have mentioned the thickness of the carry bag, the thickness of the plastic bag. So they are given the thickness of the plastic carry bag increased from 50 to 75 microns from 30th September 2021. Right. Then it has been increased. Now it has been increased to 120 microns with effect from 31st December 2022. Now the thickness of the plastic bag which you carry should be 120 microns with effect from 31st December 2022. 120 microns from 2022. So till 2021 it was 50 to 75. Till 2021 50 to 75, right? And then 120 microns from 31st December 2022. Local bodies and the state pollution control will ensure implementation and enforcement of these laws. Now extended the ability of the rules to brand owners, plastic waste processor, including which is referred as extended producers responsibility. Extended producers responsibility, EPR. Extended producers responsibility. Right. The plastic waste management rules, which was again done in the year 2022. It has classified the plastics into four categories: rigid plastic packaging, flexible plastic packaging, multi-layer plastic packaging, and plastic sheets. So it has classified them, and based on that, their usages are classified. Are classified, and and whatever has been defined, extended producer's responsibility was very strongly. Microns means thickness. Microns, thickness unit of plastics, that will help them either to recycle. If it is thick, then it can be recycled very well, right? Then extended producer's responsibility has highlighted. Now, what this extended producer's responsibility? It says that whoever is producing or whoever is manufacturing that, producer or manufacturer, he will be selling it. He will be selling it to the retailers or to the wholesalers. And after that, the users will use the plastics. Users will use the plastic. Now, it is the responsibility of producer and manufacturer. It is the responsibility of producer or manufacturer to collect and recycle the plastic wastes. It is the responsibility of producers, importers, and the brand owners to make sure that they are collecting the plastics. And if it is possible, it is collection of the plastic. And then he has to do two things. If it is feasible, then he has to recycle. And if it is not recycled, he has to dispose that scientifically. He has to dispose the plastic waste scientifically, scientific norms. And this is what is referred as extended producers responsibilities, and they all will be monitored by Central Pollution Control Board. And for all this, the producers and manufacturer has to register through online centralized portal. So remember, it is now the responsibility of EPR, producers, manufacturer. So we refer that as extended producers responsibility. EPR, it is his responsibility, the manufacturer or the producers, to collect all the solid plastic waste, and then if it is possible, recycle. If not if not then you dispose it carefully, right? So extended EPR, so this term, extended producers responsibility. Now here when he uses them, production of the packaging material, then pre and post consumer plastic waste which are generated, segregate at their facilities, right? After that, if it is recycled, use it use it. If it is recyclable, use it. If not, then dispose it carefully. Dispose it carefully. Now, this is the term which you should keep in the mind. You don't have to write entire stories. So extended producer responsibility talks about all the process involved, all the process, including from manufacturing, creating awareness, and collecting of the solid plastic waste. After that, if any solid plastic waste, if it is recycled, then he has to recycle that, or else it can be ended up in different methods, and this can be used in the context of something called as waste to health. Waste to wealth. Is it clear? So this is all about something called as the plastic waste, solid waste, plastic waste in the context of any examination. Right. Now, whatever we have discussed is more than sufficient, because this year you can expect question from plastic waste, as This 2023, we celebrated that as Plastic Pollution Awareness Day. Facts and datas. Now we move on to environment impact assessment. Environment impact assessment. Now what this environment impact assessment says? It's a very simple process, very simple process. It is about assessing, assessing or study or understand. Assessing, study or understand the impact of proposed project, impact of proposed project, impact of proposed project on environment and the biodiversity in that area. It means including the flora, fauna, and human beings, including human beings, flora and fauna. Assessing, study, or understand the impact of proposed project on environment or biodiversity before setting the project, before starting the project. Assessing, study, understand the impact of proposed project on the environment and biodiversity before setting the project, before setting the project, right? Then what else it does? This is one aspect. Second is, when they do the assessment, they identify the major issues associated with that project. They will identify the major issues associated with the project, with the project. And third one is, when they have identified the major issues, they provide a solution for the issues. They provide solution for the issues. It means solution for the problems arising out of that project. Solution for the problems arising from the projects. Now, this is what you should understand. So, environment impact assessment, it talks on the two parameters. That is, every time we talk about something called as sustainable development goals, or we talk about sustainable development. So, sustainable development always talks about two components plus social equity. That is, environmental concern is also important. Economic development is also economic growth or development is also very important. And the third one, it talks about social equity. Social equity, you can't neglect environment based on economic development, and you can't neglect economic development by taking only environmental concern. So environment is also important, and economic development is also important. So what best we can do is, we can make a precautionary option that if any company wants to set up a big project in any area, then before setting that project, you have to make an assessment of the impact of that project on the biodiversity and the local people. And if you find any type of problems, you justify that stand and try to find out those problems, can they be settled by making certain steps. If they are settled, then you can go ahead with the program or project. If not, then that project has to be stopped. So this is called as the environment impact assessment. It is to identify the impact, find the solution, find the solution, And if that problems are settled by any of the methods, then there is a possibility that you can go ahead with that project which you have planned. And we refer this as environment impact assessment. Now many times we have come across that any project which is done without environment impact assessment, any project which has started without environment impact assessment, which has created huge amount of socio-economic losses. So anything which is done before the calculating risk, anything which is calculated before the risk parameters, when you set up the project, then it has created huge amount of socio-economic losses without environment impact assessment. And many countries in the world, they follow EIA. Many countries in the world they follow environment impact assessment, and India is also the one which has started following environment impact assessment after systematically after this 1984 project, after 1984, when we had a strong impact of what we refer that as episode bhopal episode, right? So we have experienced that in this Bhopal episode of 1984, where in the Union Carbide factory, where the factory was set up, the factory or project was set up without environment impact assessment. And the leakage from this which created large amount of methyl isocyanide, because if the assessment would have been done, then they would have suggested proper standards. Whenever assessments are done, they will always say proper standards which has to be maintained, norms which has to be maintained. And this was not done in the Bhopal episode, and this created huge losses, deaths in that region. Then again, we found them in the many areas like the Bagjan oil field, the Bagjan oil fields, where we find a large amount of accidents, the fire accidents, and this created major impact on the biodiversities. Proximity, we have the Dibruva National Park, where the biodiversity was affected, or Vizag polymer case, Visakhapatnam polymer case. So all these are incidences where if the environment impact assessment would have been done, then they would have provided a proper safe channel for the activities done here. Right. So all these are referred as the environment impact assessment, which is done before setting up of any project. So hence we say the benefits of environment impact assessment is it makes the protection of environment, takes into consideration all the parameters. It makes the optimum utilization of resources. It can be cost, it can be environmental concern, right? Optimum utilization is done because it suggests many models, and from that the best one is selected. So it is saving the time and cost of the project. So before that, when you do, it is a blueprint which does all the activities. It will save the time and also cost of the project, lessens the conflict between the local people and the project proponents, because whenever environment impact assessment is done, so local people's voice is taken into very strong point. So local people are also involved in the process of EI. Local people are also involved in the process of environment impact assessment, and that's the reason why that is the reason why when their views are taken into strong consideration before or beginning of the project, then there will not be conflicts in the later stage when you start the project. So everything is done before, everything is done before setting up of the projects. Is it clear? And hence whenever when we talk about environment impact assessment, it always study to predict the effect of proposed activity, and it is referred as the best decision tool, which is based on economic and environmental cost benefits. It identifies the impacts and proposes the adverse effects of that, and it lessens the conflict by promoting the community participation, because community or the local people are involved there. Local people are involved there. So hence it will reduces the conflict between the local people and the project proponent. Now the question is, who will do that? Whose responsibility is to get environment impact assessment? Who will get environment impact assessment? Right. Now, environment impact assessment is not done by any government. It is not done by any government. The proponent of the project, the company who is making the project, it is its responsibility. It is its responsibility, the company's responsibility to get environment impact assessment done and done. After this environment impact assessment, which is done, when it is done, then this is submitted to review to the expert committee is what we say. Expert committees, and these are the expert committees of governments, what we say: central expert committee or state expert appraisal committee. So generally we refer them as expert appraisal committee. Expert appraisal committee. And once the expert appraisal committee says yes, you can go ahead, then the project is ready to go. If the expert appraisal committee feels that it need more correction, if needs more correction, then it has to undergo again and correct that. Third, if it says no, then the project ends up. So the responsibility it is the responsibility of the project owner to get the environment impact assessment done by a very significant or efficient institution. Done by efficient institution. And these are scientific institutions, right? So which they do. Now in India we are having many institutions like Tata Energy Research Institute, Tata Energy Research Institute. So such institutions which are in the private sectors, noted private institutions, so they perform the environment impact assessment, and they will give to the company, and this company will submit to the expert appraisal committee, and these expert appraisal committee, when they are agreed, then it is ready to go with that. So here big projects, maybe it can be road construction, it can be construction of irrigation project, it can be hydroelectricity projects, right? Very large projects are taken into consideration. Very large projects are taken into consideration for environment impact assessment. That's a simple part. Now, what are the aspects and how it is done? So in the context of India, they were first introduced in the River Valley projects in 1976 and 1977. First introduced. Normally, in that. The first environment impact assessment were introduced in 1976, but they could not be brought up very carefully. But the incidents of 1984, which we refer them as tragedy, Bhopal tragedy is an eye opener. It is an eye opener where we found that any such event, any such project, before any type of assessment, if it is done, then it will create huge socio-economic losses. Huge losses will be there. It can be losses of life and losses of property. And hence, after this Bhopal episode, we created an umbrella act. Umbrella means which had many acts within that. We created an umbrella act which includes many acts within its purview regarding creating norms, safety, regulations, restrictions, fines, imposition, which can be given by them. And this act is referred as Environment Protection Act of 1986. And this was created after the Bhopal episode of 1984. Bhopal episode of 1984. Now, keeping this Protection Act in the mind, India notified its first environment impact assessment norms in the year 2094. And in the year 2094, the norms which were introduced for the first time, they were included with what we refer them as the projects, which consisted of 29 category projects. 29 category projects. Category means irrigation or road construction, hydrothermal. So 29 category projects, and any project where the investment is above 50 crore, any project where the investment is above 50 crore, right? So 29 category projects and any project where the investment is above 50 crores, they have to go mandatory. They have to go mandatorily the environment impact assessment. They have to go EIA. They have to go environment impact assessment. There is no other go. They have to make their assessment before, and remaining projects are not required. So you don't have to buy out all the 29 categories. Major projects and where the investment is more than 50 crores. So only those were required for EIA in the year 1994. And it was replaced with modified draft of 2006. Modified by that. And then again, the new draft was introduced in the year 2020. Now we'll try to understand what was in the year 2006 and what changes were introduced in the 2020, which is referred as controversial. Now we'll try to understand the draft of 2006. Right. Now, when we talk about the draft of 2006, remember that in the environment impact assessment of 2006, right? So there, decentralized environment clearance projects were there. Now, all the projects were classified into two categories. Two categories based on the size of the project, based on the volume of the project, based on the cost of the project, based on its impact, etc. So two categories were classified, and they are referred as category A and category B. Category B. Please understand this. Now, category B were again divided into two. Now, all the clearance for the category A will be given by center. center. That is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, where it has set up a committee called as Expert Appraisal Committee. Expert Appraisal Committee will give approval for all the category A projects. Category A projects. Now, category B projects. Category B projects are those projects. Category B projects are those projects where they are taken by or they are given by the state governments. State governments. And these category B are again subdivided into two groups. They are subdivided into two groups, category B1 and category B2. Category B1 and category B2. Now here, category B1 are those projects which require EIA. Category B1 are those projects which require the environment impact assessment before the project. And category B2 projects are there which do not need EIA. No environment impact assessment. Directly they can start constructing. Directly they can start with. So category B2 will not have any type of EIA. Any type of EIA. So hence, environment impact assessment is done for two categories. That is all the category A. All the category A has to undergo environment impact assessment. And then category B1. Category B1. So both has to go through environment impact assessment. Environment impact assessment. And here you should remember the approval for category A is given by the expert appraisal committee. The approval is given by expert appraisal committee for category A projects. And the approval for category B1 is given by state level. Is given by state level. And we refer that as State Expert Appraisal Committee. State Expert Appraisal Committee. State Expert Appraisal Committee. And this is what we refer them as the decentralized environment clearance projects. So all the projects were classified into category A and category B. All the category A projects invariably, when we classify them as category A, they have to undergo environment impact assessment. Mandatorily, they have to go EIA. And category B are subdivided into two, category B1 and category B2. And category B1, they have to undergo EIA. And category B2, they do not need any type of environment impact assessment. So always remember, only these two are the one which requires EIA. All category A project has to go EIA, and all category B1 has to undergo EIA, environment impact assessment. And there is no environment impact assessment for category B project. They can directly start. This is called as decentralized environmental clearances. Right now, next is about the process which is involved. Process which is involved. So here we refer them as four stages. Four stages. Four stages. Now, you have to remember that all the projects category A and category B1 has to undergo EIA. So hence, all the category A are to be undertaken for EIA. Then screening is not done for category A. Screening is done for only category B projects. Only for category B project. Screening, identifying them. And then they are segregated into category B1 and category B2. Screening is done only for category B, not for category A, because all category A has to go for EIA. And after this, after the screening which is done, this category B1 has to undergo EIA. And category B2, category B2, so it do not require any type of EIA. So hence, environment impact assessment is done for category A and category B1. So remember this, category A and category B1. So only these two has to be moved further. Category B2, they have start constructing. Then second one is scoping, which talks about approval of terms of references. So terms of references is information about the project. It is about information about the project. Right. So what it consists of, what it is doing. And this is given to center. Information of the project is given to Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And in the context of category B, it is given to the State Expert Appraisal Committee. It is given to the State Expert Appraisal Committee. It means they take permission for proceeding to EIA. So it means that it is taking the permission. It is taking the permission for EIA. Right. And this scoping is done for only category A and category B1, not for category B2. It means that once it is done, once they agree, please go ahead, then the EIA process starts. Right. So EIA process starts. Now he makes all the datas. He will submit all the no objection certificate. And after that, the third important one is public hearing. Third one is public hearing. That is the local people. The local people where the project is proposed. Where the project is proposed. Now, public hearing is responsibility of State Pollution Control Board. So, public hearing is the responsibility of State Pollution Control Board to arrange the people. They will give certain date. They will give certain date and they will ask the people, local people, to meet there. And these local people, after arrangement which is done by the State Pollution Control Board, after getting that, so their suggestions and objections are included. Their suggestions and objections are included. Their suggestions and objections are included. So hence, when their suggestions or objections are included, that's where the conflicts will not be there. So whatever their objections are there, they will be implementing them. They will be rectifying them. And suggestions, they will take very strongly. And these suggestions and objections are included in the environment impact assessment. They see that whatever issues are there, they will try to modify that. They will settle the objections. They will try to find any alternate way to their objections, and by which they can try to bring it out. Now, if you are reading your current affairs, recently, that is in the month of the February, 2024, Maharashtra State Pollution Control Board has arranged the public hearing for a project which is being proposed there, the largest project called as Vadhavan Port. Right, because local people have objected that this Vadhavan Port, if it is constructed in Mumbai, then it will have a huge impact on their livelihood. So they made a strong argument. They objected to the Vadhavan project, which is a part of Sagarmala project, And recently, in the February month, last week, there was a public hearing was arranged by Maharashtra State Public Service Commission. Sorry, Maharashtra State Pollution Control Board. Maharashtra State Pollution Control Board. And the inputs were taken, and all the inputs which were given by the public were either oral or written documents. So they are in both written as well as oral, both written and oral, and they are taken very strongly. They are studied very strongly, and after that, appraisal committee is there. So expert appraisal committee gives approval for category A project, and state expert appraisal committee takes care of category B1. If it finds okay, then category A is allowed. If it says no, then category B1, sorry, if it says no, then it collapses. So this is how the 4 stage is seen in the context of environment impact assessment. Environment impact assessment. That is, initially they will a project proponent will take. He will make the site selection. Site selection will be these areas should not be within coastal regulation zones. So they should not be within coastal regulation zones. They should not be in the protected areas. They should not be in the protected area. So he has to first select a site in any areas. Then he should conduct the environment impact assessment. Then no objection certificate. Then State Pollution Control Board will arrange public hearing. And this is where they can be given in writing and oral. And this is where their suggestions and objections are taken. Their suggestions and objections are taken, and then they will take the no objection certificate from the State Pollution Control Board, and after that review is done. So if it is category A project, it has to be expert appraisal committee. If it is category B1, it has to be state expert appraisal committee, SEAC. Right. Now, based on that, if it is accepted, then he can go ahead. If it is rejected, then entire process has to be stopped. If it suggests some changes, then he has to start from the beginning where he has started. We refer that as conducting EIA and continuing the entire process. So this is how the 2006 environment impact assessment is done. And this entire process is defined into 8 steps. One is screening. Whatever I have explained is given here, screening. Now, screening is done only for category B projects, identifying them. Then scoping, terms of references, boundaries and times within that. Then impact analysis, impact on that. When it identified the impact, then it has to suggest mitigation. Mitigation. Environment impact. Right. Then reporting is done. Right. Reporting of decision-making body and other interested parties. That is public hearing. Public hearing is done, where their objections and suggestions are included. And then review of environment impact assessment. It is done by expert appraisal committee at the center for category A and state expert appraisal committee for the category B project. Then decision making. If they decide yes, then the project is okay. If not, it has to be restructured or it ends its stage here. Then after that, post monitoring. once the project is commissioned, it checks to ensure that the legal standards, whatever they have been done, they are validating to their data. So whatever documents which they are submitted, whatever norms they have given, whatever norms, whatever standards they are given, it has to be strictly monitored. It has to be strictly monitored. So there should not be any deviation or dilution in the methods what they have been given. So this is called as the environment impact assessment process. Now, if you see the data which are given from 1994, 2006 and now, we find that number of changes were introduced in the environment effect assessment from 2006 till 2022. So 17 changes were introduced in 2018, 19, 2020, 16 changes were introduced, 2021, 24 changes. Many changes were introduced in that. Many changes were introduced in that. And that is where environmentalists always oppose this. Environmentalists oppose this. They oppose that because they say that in the name of economic activity, you are compromising environmental aspect. They always say that in the context of economic development, you are compromising, you are neglecting the environment, you are neglecting the environmental concern. But the central government says that these projects have been cleared because of certain strategic significance. They have been cleared because of certain strategic significance, or sometimes maybe because of their significance for economic development of the countries. So they always say that these were changed maybe because of economic development, environmental concerns, or maybe because of strategical locations. So hence we have made many changes starting from 2008 up to 2022. Now, the major impact is seen in the year 2020. In the year 2020, where it talks about the post facto approval of the project. It means that initially all these projects they were referred as the polluter pay principle. Polluter pay principle. It means if any project is polluting, then don't allow it. Don't allow it. So any project, he has to go EIA before setting up a project. So if you find that any issues are there, don't allow the project to start. That is called as polluter pay principle. If it is polluting, then he should not be given a permission to start any type of industry or project. But in the 2020, it has moved away from polluter pay principle to pollute and pay. Pollute and pay. Pollute and pay. So here it says that you set up a company, you set up a project. After that, you can take environment impact assessment. So this is called as post facto approval. Post facto approval of the project. That is, you start the project, then later you can take EIA. Later you can take environment impact assessment. This is where many environmentalists opposed that. So after setting up of the project, you are giving him a chance to pollute, and later you are asking him to pay. Later you are asking him to pay. So it means that directly you are permitting the pollution. Directly you are giving him the norm to violate, and then you are collecting the penalty of that. It does not make any sense. And we are talking about carbon neutrality. It will not make us to reach to the Paris Agreement. Such types of post facto approval will not make us to reach to the carbon neutrality, because they will hinder the objectives of Paris Agreement. They will hinder the objectives of Paris Agreement. This is one. Second, reduce the time period for public consultation. 30 days to 20 days for project in non-urban areas, and from 30 days to 40 days in the urban areas. So here they have reduced the dates. Now the environmentalist says that why you are in hurry burry, why you are not giving sufficient time, why you are not giving sufficient time. Why no sufficient time? Right, because some people, they are moved away from that areas, they have to come, they have to study, and they will need certain times. Why you are reduced to that? Why you are reduced to that? To very small days time. Why you are reduced? So you need a sufficient time. Instead of that, you would have increased rather than decreasing the time for public hearing. Then project promoter has to find a compliance report once in a year. Now initially, before 2020, he has to file this compliance once in 6 months. That is the standards. Compliance means the standards what he has maintaining, the standards or criteria what he has maintaining. So if he is submitting once in 6 months, accountability will be more, so it will be having higher accountability. Higher accountability. So it means that this can create a huge transparency if it is once in 6 months. Now, when it is once in a year, if you are giving once in a year, then there is a problem that the accountability can be reduced. Accountability can be reduced here. So this is where they say so yearly basis is dangerous one. So rather than 6 months, you can rectify and correct. Year long is very difficult. Then government will have authority to categorize the project as strategic. Now the moment when they classify them as a strategic, then the government will provide no data about that. Government will disclose no information. Once they define as strategic, government will disclose no information to the public. Once it is defined as strategic, means security concern, then the government will not give the data in the public domain. There will be no part. Then economically sensitive areas. Now remember this, economically sensitive areas, it is the areas which they are approved. Economically sensitive areas, now don't confuse this with ecological sensitive areas. So economically sensitive areas are those areas which are very important for economic development, very important for economic development. And these economically sensitive areas are given by, these are given or criterias are fixed, or they were given or laid by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So Ministry of Environment and Forest of Climate Change, so they will announce any project as economically sensitive areas, any project in the economically sensitive areas. And the moment when they explain them, when the moment when they put them into ecological sensitive areas, they are taken out of EIA. So these are taken out of environment impact assessment. However big project is that, they will not require any type of environment impact assessment if they are classified as economically sensitive areas. Right, then exempt construction project up to 1,50,000 square kilometers from EIA and public consultation. Now such type of big projects were taken in Delhi and many large urban areas. Now the result is they are emitting large amount of particulate matter 2.5, large amount of air pollution in that, like PM 2.5, PM 10, which becomes hazardous in that areas. Big projects, large projects, at least they should be brought under EI and public. Now they have exempted the big projects, the large and big projects. That violation can be reported by government representatives. Now how a inferior person can complain about his superior? A whistleblower cannot be from the government. So they say violation can be reported only by government representative, no private. So how he is inferior officer, how inferior can complain about his superior? How he can complain about superior? How easy for a person, or how difficult for a person to become a whistleblower of a company staying in that same company, right? It has exempted 40 projects which do not need any clearance, which do not need any clearance. The moment when the projects are there, no clearance, no EIA for them. 40 projects. Then categorization of projects that require EIA. Now, this is very vital. In the year 2006, in the year 2006, 59 projects required environment impact assessment. Category A and category B, 28. So category B1, that is after screening. After screening. And here the state government has discretionary power. The state government has discretionary power to classify any project as B1 or B2 or reject that. State has a discretionary power in 2006 regarding approval for category B1 and also for category B2. State has discretionary power. Now, in the 2020, in the year 2020, when they talked about that, all are predefined. All are predefined. So, no discretionary power to the states. All are predefined by the center. Defined by the center. So, the state has no discretionary power. No discretionary power, right? And here it says the same, category A and category B1. So these have to go environment impact assessment. They're already defined. They're already defined. So there is no role of state government. So they say that state government is a mere spectator, observer in the environment impact assessment, right? So this is where many state governments have impact on EI, and environmentalists oppose that. Environmentalists oppose that. Why you are taking all in your? So we are talking about something called as a decentralization, but you are making all as a centralized approach. You are taking everything within you. Category B1 also you are deciding, category A also you are deciding, and everything is that the state governments have no discretionary powers. They can't make any type of their own arguments. So this is what the category type is. Now, recently, the changes which were introduced in the 2022 were rating systems for the State Environment Impact Assessment Authority was introduced. And this was on January 2022. The central ruled out star rating system for the impact assessment authorities to make them more efficient, transparent, and accountable. And this rating system to be updated every month based on 7 parameters. Now here the problem is environmentalists say that in the name of rating the systems, you are making the hurry burry approval. So you are making the approval very fast. Approval very fast. Hurry burry things are there. Now example is, if any state government is there, if any state government is there where it is undertaking, where it is making the appraisal, where it is making an appraisal, if it gives an appraisal, if it gives an appraisal within 80 days, within 80 days, then that state government which has given an approval within 80 days, so it will get 2 points. 2 points are added to the rating. If the same state, if the state does not give the approval within 80 days, if it delays, if it delays to 120 days and more, then in that case it will get 0 points. It will get 0 points. So the rating is downgraded here, downgraded. So in this context, to maintain the rating, to maintain the standards, so state governments has to go with something called as giving approval in hurry burry, fast approval in hurry burry, and also that they are certain norms where they have to ensure that, or they have to make sure that they are not asking the data again and again. So limited amount of data are required. So this is where the environmentalists are saying that in the context of rating, environmentalists are saying that in the context of rating, you are making the huge negative impact on the environment, huge impact on the environment. So this is what we refer them as benefit of points for the states. Benefit of the points means it is something ratings which can say that yes, this state is something which is showing ease of doing business, where you can put your projects there. Best rating means the FDIs can enter there very easily, right? So if they are having best rating, so generally they will make FDIs where they can invest, and where they feel that yes, this is an idea where I can, we have less of red tapeism, and where I can invest in that, right? So because every state government in the present context, we something called as competitive federalism, no state wants to leave behind. So the ratings also have an impact. So if they're having the ratings, then the investments will flow. If the ratings are very worst, then who will invest in that? Who or which FDI will flow there? Is it clear? So I think that point is clear, right? Benefits of the ratings. So in that case, again, there is hurry burry in the approval of the projects. Is it clear? So this is all about the environment impact assessment. And by this, we completed the entire syllabus which is required for your UPSC. All the syllabus, including the prelims and mains, we have completed here. We have completed here, right? So this we completed all solid waste management. Everything has been completed. Only thing is you revise. If you do revision, if you do revision, and if you make updations, if you update that, then only then only you can write very good answers, or else it becomes very very difficult, very difficult. Now certain questions which were asked in the previous year question. Now discuss the consequence of climate change on the food security in tropical countries. On tropical countries. Now such questions which are asked in the examination. Now here the question is about tropical countries. The tropical countries includes African countries, Latin American countries, Asian countries also. It will include African countries. It will include the Asian countries, and it will also include the American countries, which are in between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. Now, if you see the African countries, so African countries are poor. And if you say the Latin American countries, so they are also very poor. Asian countries, Asian countries, including India, again, large amount of economic disparities are there. Now, here, when we talk about the impact of climate change, you should remember that it is on the basis of IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in the year 2007, where it has given its fourth assessment report. Just recollect that. In the fourth assessment report, it says that the tropical countries, the tropical countries are the one which are most affected, will be most affected by the extreme weather based condition, extreme weather based impact, like floods, cyclones, drought, forest fires, etc. So that should be kept in the mind. Flood, cyclone, etc. So most will be affected by that. And when we see this, most of the tropical countries in Asia and Latin America and Africa, they are poor countries. They are poor countries. And most of the countries, they are having agriculture as their backbone, agriculture as their economic activities. Now, when we talk about the food security perspective, when you talk about food security perspective, right? In geography, you are studied about that. Food security, it is always calculated on four parameters. That is, the first one is called as utilization of the food. And this utilization talks about a very significant aspect called as nutrient, whether you are consuming the food with good nutrient, or food safety. Food safety. That is the first component of food security. Then the second component of food security. The second component of food security talks about availability of food. Availability of food. Now, whenever when we talk about availability of the food, you should remember that it is talking about production and distribution of food grains. Production, distribution of food grains, etc. That is the second perspective. Second perspective, availability. And the third, access to affordability, the same thing. Third one is it talks about food system stability. Food system stability. Right. Now, what this food system stability talks about? Again, this is your geography concern. It talks about the production, processing. It talks about production of food grains, processing. Processing means reducing their wastage, increasing their shelf life, value addition. I'm repeating, reducing their wastage, increasing their shelf life, value addition to that. Right, processing, distribution, distributing them to different part. Then consumption. Consumption. So that is the third parameter. We refer that as food system stability. Then last one is what we refer them as accessibility. Accessibility. Now, whenever when you're talking about accessibility, you should remember that whether you are getting them in affordable prices. Affordable prices. Now, this should be kept in the mind. If you write any answers without having the basic idea, then from where he will give marks? From where he will give marks? So, whenever when you are writing your answers, you should remember food security concept, which has been given by FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization. It talks about four parameters: utilization, accessibility, availability, and food system stability. Food system stability. Now, in the context of climate change, if you see this, all areas are affected. All areas are affected in the tropical countries. So, the climate change is affecting the production because due to climate change, the yield is decreased. Wheat and all decrease due to climate change. Large amount of disease are affecting to the agricultural crops. Then large amount of pests like locust are affecting. So hence availability is disturbed and production is also disturbed. So many events like the droughts, floods, forest fires, etc. So where you will get that? Where you will get that? And we are not getting the nutrient foods. The quality of food is also deteriorated. The quality of food is also deteriorated. Right. So this is how you have to write your answers, keeping the things. It's not very simple, but you have to remember these things. So you have to mention IPCC report, then you have to talk on the food security with these four parameters, then you should come back to the climate change and tropical countries. So hence these tropical countries, they always have population burden and they are always have large amount of economic disparities, and they are the countries where we find they still follow the old method of agriculture, and that's why these are the one which will be affected most by the impact of climate change, which has been highlighted by the IPCC report. Right, so such questions you can expect in the context of your UPSC. Nowadays they're asking something which is beyond the superficial answers, which linked with geography and linked with current affairs. Now, this question: identify and discuss the factors responsible for diversity of natural vegetation in India. Access the significance of wildlife sanctuaries. This we have already discussed when we talk about India's biodiversity. So, India's biodiversity. Now, here you have to explain that India's biodiversity. India's complex geology, that is where Indian plate collided with the Eurasian plate, recent Himalayas and the oldest one. Then India's landforms, we find mountains are there, plain areas are there, deserts are there. So all these you should mention. Then climatic condition of India, the presence of Himalayas, which provides tropical climate to India, tropical climates to India. Soils of India, which are not the same. Monsoon, that is the monsoon climate or rainy season, which are different from each other, right? So all these you should take into consideration. Vastness of the country, large area, long coastline, desert ecosystem. So all these you should take into consideration, which is responsible to have India a very significant biodiversity. And hence India has four biodiversity hotspots, and India has two biogeographical realms of the worlds. And if you take India, we are having 18 biosphere reserves and tiger reserves. So you can give that data. Then assess the significance of wildlife sanctuaries in rainforest regions of India. So rainforest regions of India, wherever we find wildlife sanctuaries are there. So these wildlife sanctuaries are protected areas. So where do you find the rainforest regions of India? Western Ghats, northeastern part of India, Andaman Nicobar. So these are the areas where we always find the issues of deforestation. We always find the forest degradation, landslides and all. So whenever these protected areas are there, so these protected areas will always make sure that the forest cover is maintained, biodiversity is maintained, landslides are reduced, soil erosions are reduced, which will be a very significant impact on maintaining the rich ecosystems in that areas. To maintain the ecosystems, which can be having good amount of healthy perspectives. So this is completely your application based question, if you are having the data, if you are having something in your mind, then only you can write, or else it is very very difficult for you to make there. Is it clear? Then discuss the cause of depletion of mangroves and explain. This we have explained. So first, whenever such questions are there, you have to talk on mangroves. Mangroves means their their characteristics, halophytes, salt tolerant, all those you should mention, right? Then distribution of mangroves in India. I have explained that. So we find that 60% in the east coast, 23%, 27% in the west coast, and 13% in Andaman and Nicobar. Just give some idea about that. Just give some idea with the maps. Then importance, services provided by the mangroves, benefits, a list of services I have given. In that 5 6 also you can mention, right? And their importance you should mention. Then threat to the mangroves. So even though they are not asked, you should mention the threat. Threat should be mentioned. Then again, suggestions for that, measures which have been taken to that, Then role of mangroves in India's GDP. So that should be your way forward question. Very simple one. So certain factual questions can be asked in your UPSC examination. Only thing is you update that with your current. Yes, Misty you can give, mangroves for alliance you can give, right? So no, don't write nematophores. Just mention that they talk about anatomical and physiological adaptation. Don't require to write that. You don't require. Never mention such. You write all these which are current affairs and basic things, right? Now explain the purpose of green grid initiative. Now this green grid initiative and the International Solar Alliance. Now when you are reading your current affairs, International Solar Alliance was introduced during the Paris meet. So during the Paris meet, along with India and France, we initiated International Solar Alliance. So write their objectives. Write their objectives. Right. Then in the year 2020, we made amendment. So what amendment was done? Can anybody recover it very fast? What amendment was done in the year 2020 regarding the membership of the International Solar Alliance? All countries were eligible to join that. Perfect. All countries of United Nations were eligible. Very perfect. So when all countries were eligible, it means that the countries which were out of the tropics were also involved here. Non-tropicals are also involved. So that is the reason why. That is the reason why in the year 2021, in the year 2021, the countries which are out of the tropical areas like UK, United Kingdom, United Kingdom, in collaboration with India, right? So UK and India, in collaboration, they initiated a green grid, which is referred as, have you, do you know this? OSOWOG, one sun, one world, one grid. So this is something which you have to remember. This is talking about the same green grid initiatives, that is one sun, one world, and one grid. So it talks about accessibility of renewable energy sources beyond tropics, accessibility of renewable energy beyond tropics, and that should be about cost effective pooling of the resources. So all those points, if you mention, your work is done. And recently, you can add that the sixth meeting, which was held in the Gurugram, which talks about creating mini grids, so that accessibility has to be done there. This is what, read the topics, read the content, and based on that, you can write very good answers in the context of your UPSC. Right? How does the draft environment impact assessment differ from 2006? And this is what we have discussed systematically in the context of your examination. So 2020, out of that 7 8 points, if you mention 4 5 points also, that is more than sufficient. But you have to mention first, what is EIA? When you're answering this question, don't conclude directly. First you mention what is environment impact assessment. What is that? Then how this environment impact assessment started. That is, at least you can mention 1977, then 1984 episode, then 1994, then you moved on to 2006, then you moved on to 2020. You give the flow. You give the flow. Then the examiner will be more interested in evaluating your answers. Then the 4 stages: screening, scoping, and all. Just brief of that. Brief of that, how it has been decentralized. Very brief, very brief. Then the difference in that. So based on the marks, you can calculate and you can put your answers there. Right. So by this, we can conclude the session. Current affairs, yes, they should be updated. Like International Big Cat Alliance, I told you about that. International Big Cat Alliance, which was launched by India, where 7 big cats has to be protected in the domains, and all such points like the black cat part, or say black tiger part, or certain important current affairs, I try to include them with your basics. So I made an effort to include basics along with the current affairs. It is very difficult to conclude all those, but still I made effort to do that. It's a human tendency, so maybe certain errors were also there, but in spite of that, I tried my level best to explain the contents here. Right. uh, Necessary reading material means you can take current affairs, you can take current affairs and NCERT books. In fact, I have covered almost all the things. In fact, I have covered almost all the things you can take, but please be in touch with PIBs. Right. So PIBs will give you good amount of data. NCERT books, you can take any good material you are having, you can take it from that and you can accumulate that. So keep this as a skeleton. So whatever PPTs you are having, keep them as a skeleton. I'm not telling that I'm the best teacher, but those PPTs you have followed since from your 2 weekends, and that will help you to accumulate the information and put them into a very fluently where you can write them. So by this, we can conclude a session of ecology and environment. So in between, wherever, if any mistakes are there, if any errors are there, sincere apologies. I have not made anything which are referred as errors. Apologies for that. And all the best for your careers. Do well, read well, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Always remember, the two greatest kings in the history of India are Akbar and Ashok. Why? Because of consolidation. If you consolidate, then you will be referred as the best kings. If you keep on conquering like Muhammad bin Tughlaq, you are conquering new area and you are losing the area. You are conquering new area and you are losing the old area. That should not be done. Make a proper plan of revision. Make a proper strategy. Do the consolidation. Digest the content which is there. You take time to read. Don't be in a hurry to complete the portion. Read it carefully and do all the process in a systematic way. And from morning to evening, you are sitting. It means that you are having abundant patience, more patience than anybody else. Weekend students, when they are sitting from 12 to 8, it means that they are having abundant patience or potential capacity. So utilize them in proper way, and may God bless you and get all dreams what you want to do. And by this, I conclude my session. All the best. Do well in your studies. Do well in your life. Thank you.